Hello, and welcome back to the Triangle Business Podcast. This is episode 4. I'm one of your co-stars, Joey Nattel. I'm followed by
Scott Moore.
hello, welcome.
Howdy,
So
howdy.
to,
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy
So
podcast.
today we are going to be talking about balance and why that may not always be a good idea, and maybe it is, depending on where you are and what you're doing. So the difference between balance and alignment and all those good things. So I'll start off with you first, Scott. When you think of balance versus alignment or work-life balance, whatever direction you want to go, what comes to mind for you?
I mostly think that balance is a myth and it's only it's only ever achieved at any level if you zoom out. Right? Like right now, am I working or am I playing? I
True.
mean, first of all, I don't know. But second of all, like I would categorize, I mean, it's on my calendar in blue, which means I've classified it as a work activity.
Yeah.
So cool. Like, you know, um, but like this is just happening in the moment and everything's only ever happening in the moment. And in that moment, I think that most of the time, you know, we're only ever doing about one thing.
Yeah.
And so like, but I look, if I look at my calendar for the week,
Mhm.
there is some, again, I don't really care that much about balance. I'm
Mhm.
like, everything I do uh moves me towards the life I want to have.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know what definition of alignment we're going with today, but to me that feels like a level of alignment. Um, it's all going towards what I want to have.
Hmm. Well said. I mean, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. So what comes to mind for me about that is like we're only ever doing one thing. I mean, this is true. This comes to mind about the idea of multitasking in a lot of ways. So arguably there's only 2% of the population that can do true multitasking, which is even debatable in itself. But assuming that's true, 98% of everyone in the world can't physically do that. And studies have shown this, that multitasking isn't really a thing. It's more of a hyper switching in a lot of ways. And so, what we know about hyper switching with a lot of things is that you become like a jack of all trades or a Jane of all trades and a master of none, essentially. That isn't, I would also argue my own point on that piece, but for in terms of tasks and balance in your life, it's um it's very difficult because you actually will, if one of the goals is speed of execution, you will progress a lot slowly because you're doing them all at once.
Yeah.
And another thing that comes to mind, there's this exercise in coaching called the life wheel. And I'm sure you're familiar with it, Scott. It's a great one. It's just
I don't know if I
not.
am.
Well, cool. Then I'll explain it very briefly. If you were to type in Google life wheel exercise, you get a million of them. And there's different kinds depending on what industry you're on. It's a very good tool. And a brief explanation to it for those who are listening is it's like a pie. And there's various categories, but the basic ones is, let's say, spirituality, relationships, social life, physical health, mental health, career, finances. Sometimes those are the same. Family and joy, for example. So when I do this exercise with clients, I get them to first I get them out of their head by doing like a random exercise, like think of a number between 1 and 20. And they're like, "Oh, I don't know, 7." And so I'm like, great. See how quickly you thought of that? And I do that for this exercise. So when I
Mhm.
ask them, when you think of on a scale of 1 to 10, how is your career? And they'll say like, 5 or something. And then you so on and so forth. Like, how's your physical health, mental health, spirituality. And so it's kind of like a snapshot. Like some people might say, like, you mean today or in general? I said, I don't like whatever comes to your mind. I think it doesn't really matter. It's like lately. And so you get a snapshot of how your life is. So the reason why I'm sharing all this is because when I discovered this exercise first coaching, I thought to myself, like, oh, yeah, great. All the areas that are lower are pulling down the areas that are going well. And all the areas that are going well are pulling the areas that are going low, like down, or vice versa. And
Yeah.
so I thought, oh, I'll just work on all the low areas. Good luck. Because you
I was
can't do
about
it.
to ask, like, is the point of the exercise that like whatever you're not doing well at, like what comes to mind when we talk about that is like, um, I do the Clifton strengths
Mhm.
with everybody I work with, and a lot of people I don't end up working with. I just like to review it because
Yeah.
I love for people to know what they're great at.
Yeah.
And you know, when I'm coaching like one of my clients, I'm like, this thing you're trying to do is calling on a lot of the areas that you're not that great at.
Hmm.
Maybe we need to get somebody else involved, like get another person who does have those strengths involved.
Yeah.
But like that's not the way our culture works. I'm
Mm.
quick to point out, like, we live in a world where, you know, if I have clients that have kids, it's really easy because I'm like, if your kid comes home from school and they've got a report card and it's like five A's
Yeah.
and like a D in math,
Yeah.
we all know what's going to be talked about at the dinner table that night, right? Like, what's up with the D in math, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that like math isn't important, but like if your second grader comes home with like a D in math, I'm like, are you sitting close enough to the blackboard? Are you sitting right next to your best friend?
Yeah. Yeah.
Glasses? Should we
Yeah.
get your hearing checked? Like, is
Yeah.
there something about subtraction that you just fundamentally don't understand?
Yeah.
But if your 11th grader comes home with a D in math, I'm like, why'd you take such a hard math class?
Yeah.
If math is not your thing. And so
Mhm.
I think of that similarly to what you're talking about. Like, do you try to elevate the areas that you're worst at, or do you just be like, let that part go and focus on the areas that you're great at?
I love that. And I want to add to more what I was saying to kind of even round it out to even a fuller picture. Because you bring a really good point there about like, you don't always have to work on the areas that you're weakest at. This particular exercise, the point isn't necessary to be like, here, this is what you suck at. It's a way to identify as like, how do you feel like your overall life is doing right now? And one of the things that I thought to myself was just like, oh, work-life balance, like have balance in all things. I always tell my clients, like, is it possible to have all areas firing at a 10 out of 10? Most of them are like, no.
Yeah.
Some say yes. It is. It is very possible. Is it possible or realistic for them to stay at 10 out of 10? Absolutely not. So, but it is possible to have them at a 10 out of 10. And
Well, I'm a
so,
big believer, just not to interrupt, but like what was a 10 out of 10 2 years ago is not the same as
correct.
what's a 10 out of 10 now. Like,
I
I
agree.
mean,
Yeah,
where my business was in 2020 has no resemblance to where it is now. And
absolutely.
where it
And
was in 2020 was far ahead of where it was in 2015. So like those numbers are I think the goalposts move a lot.
which in lies the power of the exercise
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because it moves along with you. And so, one of the traps that I fell into when I first discovered this exercise was similar to your point, was just like, oh, like I'm going to learn how to work on all these at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was realistic and possible. It is not. So, you focus on a certain few, like typically one. So let's say you're focusing in your career and or your business. Now, I don't have kids and I'm not married, so I
Mm-hmm.
can put more time into that and I don't have to think about family. Maybe my parents, grandparents, sure, I'll see them for Christmas and birthdays and occasionally, but like it's not a daily thing for me that I have to consider. So that's not an area I have to put any energy into. And so it's you go through seasons
Yeah.
of what's important, essentially. So like if you do one or two, that's maybe doable. But if you're trying to get that big promotion or you're trying to land a really big client, probably going to put a lot of energy and time into this, which then brings us back to the concept we've been talking about, which is balance. We'll get into alignment in a minute, but what I really want to stress here that a lot of people struggle with, and this might be just a play on words, but I think it's appropriate here, is I strive for not balance, but harmony in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. So like learning how they mesh together versus how they need to be equal. That's how
Yeah.
I
Well,
envision it a lot of ways.
I know this is kind of trite, but I think that part of the reason it's trite is because there's a fundamental truth to it, and that is like we've all, well, I say we've all, most of us have probably seen this exercise, like somebody does this in front of a group where they've got like a big jar
Hmm.
and they're like, put the big rocks into the jar, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and then is the jar full, and the people in the audience say yeah it's full, and then they put the smaller rocks in and they fill in the gaps between the big rocks and so on and so forth until they add sand to it, and then ultimately they pour water into it and they're like, now is a jar full? Yes, it's full. um and the fundamental question there is, well, isn't it obvious that I could never have added the big rocks at the end? Like they wouldn't have fit when
Hmm.
I had put all the other stuff in there. So if you don't
Hmm.
put the big rocks in first, you'll never fit them in there.
Hmm.
And to me, like, yeah, like I absolutely think that we go through seasons, and there's a fancy word here, but like there's a periodicity to like when you want to check on your balance, right?
Hmm.
Like that, if if I don't spend time with my wife for a week,
Yes.
I think I'm probably out of balance. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like, I'm away for a week, doing other stuff, and I don't see her.
Hmm.
And so it becomes a priority to like spend a lot of extra time together, either before or after, to kind of help even that out. Right. But like, I can't ignore that one. That's a big rock that needs to go in. Staying in touch with my daughter is important.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously running my business and interacting with my clients is important. And yes, I can like take a week off because I'm human and I get a vacation every once in a while. um
Yes.
and so but I got to make sure I take care of the fundamentals.
Hmm.
And I think that you know the what can happen though is like, while you're just taking care of the fundamentals, some of the things like, well, you know is my spiritual life being taken into consideration?
Yeah.
Have I been ignoring my relationships with my friends too much because I've been inwardly focused on the business or my familial relationships? So
Hmm.
um so yeah, I mean, like, I think it's really smart to periodically like take your head up out of the weeds and look at the wheel and say, um is there part of this that I would rate low right now because of where my focus has been?
I agree. And that makes me think about when I have clients, when we talk about goals. Like I have a client right now and they're like, they really want to get a job and work on their public speaking. And I'm like, great. And then we've talked about the goals. I'm like, is this sustainable? Like, will you have enough time to be with your fiance
Mm-hmm.
or spend time with your family? They're like, well, if I were to just do only this, I could probably get the job in X amount of months. I'm like, yeah, if you lived and breathed it and like fitness is important to this person and they cut that out, I'm like, exercise is one of the best medicines for resilience and stress. And when you get a constant lot of rejections for applying for jobs, like you need that
Oh yeah.
resistance in a lot of ways. It's an
I
uphill
mean,
battle in a lot of ways. And so like
because we do career coaching, like, job application processes are inherently depressive.
yes, they are. And so like I like to use the word like ecological. Like, is this sustainable in a lot of ways? And I think that kind of blends into the idea of like more of alignment, I think. And so when I think the word of alignment, I think of like, what are your values? Which one would have to know their values too. And you can have values in every area of the life, using the life wheel. Typically, you have like kind of like the strength finders. You have strengths and weaknesses in all the areas, but it's ones that are most important to you. You have like your top five ones are typically the ones that you're going to consciously and unconsciously move toward 24/7. When you get to
Mhm.
6 to 10, like those are important. You're going to consciously think about them, but they're not of the top. So whenever you take on a job or you get in a relationship and like you feel this like gut, like this is not okay. I'm not sure what it is. It's usually a value in alignment. Always. I felt that when I first went to corporate month one. I didn't know what that meant back then, but
Uh-huh.
like it was against like four of my top values at the time, and they shift when you go through seasons of your life. So, kind of blending this idea of balance and harmony in workplace in a lot of ways is just like knowing like a good way or a good compass in a lot of ways is to find what balance or harmony, I think is a more appropriate word I'll use for this conversation, is like what's important to you. What do you value the most? And that can be a way to find that kind of check-in point, like you said, with your wife and your daughter. So
Well, I end up having this conversation a lot. I'd be curious to get your take on it too.
sure.
But like younger me would never believe this was true about older me. But like
Okay.
I am a fiend about my calendar because I put everything on the calendar
Uh-huh.
that's important to me.
Yes.
And if I if I look at my calendar and I see that um it's a heavy work week,
Hmm.
right? Cool, happens. Um but it means like, well, I better be conscious about making sure I also schedule time, with the other people who are important to me that are not work related. Like, my daughter recently moved back to North Carolina. It's awesome. I've gotten to see her in person a few times lately. That's
Hmm.
great. But also, like, she lives about 30 minutes away. We don't see each other every day.
Yeah.
So I was like, this week, when are you available for us to play computer games together?
Yeah.
And, I put it on the calendar. Um, and I've long felt like one of the things we do is we have these like, I really need to exercise. I like, and by the way, I'm pretty uncompromising on that. I haven't always really been this way.
Hmm.
But I'm type 1 diabetic. I got to take care of my health. And I have certain health practices like
Hmm.
injecting myself with insulin I have to do every day
Yeah.
so I can survive.
Yeah.
But also as a business owner, I get zero paid sick days every year.
Yes.
And so that means I better take care of the machine,
Yeah.
um, in between.
Yeah.
So yeah, my workouts are on the calendar. And if I have to miss one, I have to miss one. But like it goes on there to make sure that I'm taking care of the fundamentals.
Hmm.
And I think that when we're like, I should, these are some of my least favorite words. My wife knows if she really wants to piss me off, then she can just, what you should do is, because that'll, don't shit on yourself
Yeah.
thing.
Or others.
Right. The I don't really tell myself I should do anything
Hmm.
unless I go, you know what? I am going to do it. I'll put it on the calendar. Because
Yeah.
otherwise I'm just reserving the right to feel bad about not having done it.
Reserving
Because
the
there's
right.
no time allocated for it.
Right. Yeah, that's true. What gets scheduled gets done
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
I mean, I don't think you can really have any effective conversation about balance without talking about time.
Yes. That's true. They
Because
go,
I don't know how to do anything without it taking some time.
yeah.
And I have a finite amount of that. So
Hmm.
if I don't put it on the calendar, then the odds of me doing it go way, way down.
I agree. And I agree completely. And also energy, I would put in there too,
Sure.
as well, which is a little harder to measure sometimes because
Yeah.
it's a little more subjective, but that's just how the day is,
Yeah.
right? So I've been swimming a lot lately, trying to get in shape for summer. And so there was one day,
You
and I
know,
was
it's
just,
almost the end of summer, right?
I know it is. It's funny. There's a friend of mine. He said to me, he's just like, I'm like, I'm getting my summer body. He's like, you'll get your summer body when summer's over. I'm like, he's right. I pretty much almost got it now, which is hilarious, but I'll be ready for next year. So, but that's beside the point. So I didn't get as much. I got good enough sleep, but not more as much as I wanted. And I went for a swim, and I'm like, wow, I'm really dragging here. This sucks. So I was a little kinder to myself. It took a little longer. And so I think it's just, I guess, just being kind in general. That kind of fits somewhere in here. But with balance with time, I agree. It's funny you say that. And just to check in, what would younger you have said about your calendar?
I mean, younger me would have said, like, it's a drag to have to track all that, and it's much more fun to be spontaneous and, you
Yes.
know, like, I mean, I got super serious about calendaring when I started my first business because I had to,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, back then, my first business, I was a videographer.
Mhm.
All of my shoots were on certain days at certain times, which meant I not only had to be there at that time, so I had to backwards calculate, like, what time do I need to start getting ready so I can leave the house on time so I can be there on time.
Hmm.
And so suddenly my calendar was like incredibly important. And for years and years, I just had like a little, spiral bound calendar that went with me everywhere.
Hmm.
Um, and if you ever lose one of those, you are screwed. So
Yes.
finally, kicking and screaming, I got dragged into the digital age and started using Google Calendar. And
Welcome to
and
now. Welcome to
yeah,
Journey.
well, I mean, like, to be fair with myself, like, I did it, years ago, like
Yeah,
before I ever started my
of
coaching
course.
practice.
Right.
But now we have a ton of tools, right? Like, I was just talking to a client yesterday and being like, from now on, I'm going to set all of she's been in a different time zone. And so, like, aligning on when we thought we were going to be talking to each other versus when we're
Yeah.
actually talking to each other has been challenging.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'll just send it as a calendar invite, and then it'll pop onto your calendar in whatever time zone you're at the right time.
It's
So,
really convenient, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. Because I definitely missed some meetings because we didn't do that.
Yeah.
It's funny you say
Well, I
that.
mean, I work with people all over the country, and like, for me, it's a little bit more second nature than I think it was being for her, because I used to have a lot of West Coast clients, like people in California, people in Seattle,
Yeah.
and so I always had to be like, well, I can't schedule the meeting for 9 o'clock in the morning because you're going to be like, it's 6 a.m. for you.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, most of them weren't very coachable at 6 a.m.
No, no. I
So
certainly wasn't when I had to do that for a certain training that I was involved in. But it's funny you say that about calendar because like I have gotten in the habit of relying on my calendar so much that if I, for whatever reason, forget to put it on the calendar, it doesn't exist.
mm,
And that happened to me last Monday, actually. There was a colleague of mine. We were going to catch up. We scheduled a time, but we just do a Zoom meeting. We
yeah,
didn't like put that in. So it didn't happen.
yeah.
And so, so now I'm just like, hey, here's my calendar link. Like, put it in because that way we both get a reminder and all those kind of things.
I just
Um,
thought of one other organizational system that I use. I haven't done this in a long time,
yeah.
but I used it when I was getting my coaching business started.
Mhm.
And it was a friend of mine suggested this. I cleared off one whole wall of my office, and I started sticking post-it notes up there of every single thing I needed to do.
Mhm.
Like, there were books I wanted to read, people I wanted to meet, classes I wanted to take, but also, like, setting up bank accounts and getting a tax ID number and all that stuff. And I color coded it. So I had like 6 different colors of post-it notes. And so
Mhm.
if it was like a book I was going to read, it was in green. And if it was a person I was going to meet, it was in purple. And I
Mhm.
would stick them up there. And the the extra step of the system was like,
Mm.
it always felt good when I would pull down a thing and stick it on my desk and be like, right now I'm doing this thing. Cause that got me away from the whole multitasking thing. I'm like, right now I'm just doing this thing. I've got a purple post-it note. It's a person I want to meet,
Yeah.
and I'm going to send them an email to ask, propose sometimes we can meet. And then after I sent the email, I would just stick it back up on the wall because it's not done yet.
Mm.
But somebody suggested to me, don't throw them in the trash can when you're done with them. Put them in a jar, like a big mason jar on your desk,
Yeah.
and see what your jar starts to look like.
Oh.
And that was really interesting because, like, you could tell when
Mm.
I was in the mode where it was like, I'm like lacking confidence, or like, I don't know if this person wants to talk to me. So,
Mm.
like, a whole layer of the jar would be like green because I had just read a bunch of books
Mm.
that at that time, which, like, it needed to happen. But also, I could tell because that whole layer was green, like, I'm hiding out from doing other things. What's going on?
Ah.
And then there were weeks where I would empty the jar out every Friday, and I would just kind of like look at it, like, what did the jar look like this week?
Uh-huh.
And I would end up going like, well, if it looks like a gumball machine, then, where it's all different colors, all mixed, I was like, look, balance.
Yeah.
I'm doing lots of different kinds of things. So
Uh-huh.
I think that's kind of a fun one because, especially with entrepreneurs, like, we have a brain thing that we tend to categorize by color. Like,
Yeah.
it's fast to categorize by color because,
Uh-huh.
at the speed of light.
Mhm.
And so I always thought that, like, having this visual representation of what I got done was good. And nowadays, like, I kind of do that with my Google Calendar because I can color code the different things I want to put on there.
That's interesting. I never thought about that. I wonder if I can do that as a digital version. Huh. I'm gonna look into that. If anyone is listening and knows a way to like all the tasks that's on your Google Calendar and put them in like an order database, I don't know. Somebody's probably figured it out.
I guarantee there's an app for that, right?
Probably, or some sort of AI thing to do that too. Um, that's that just threw me. Sorry, my brain went a whole other direction. That's really cool. Well, here's a question that comes to mind with closing out this episode.
Sure.
When you think about the things that we've talked about in terms of balance, alignment, and harmony, if you will, um, what do you think what do you see over and over with your clients when it comes to these kind of tasks? You may have already said it with your own thing, but I'm curious. Biggest challenge, maybe just the most consistent thing they do on a regular basis, whether it's helpful or not.
I was just talking to uh, a client who's a really good friend of mine this week about this, like, just do it anyway mentality,
Mm.
right? And I I think that that's actually a really important characteristic to have in business, is like an ability to just be like, right now, I don't care how I feel. I
Mhm.
don't care what kind of mood I'm in. I'm just going to do it anyway.
Mhm.
Um, I also think that, like, we got to make sure we don't weaponize that against ourselves or anybody else.
Yeah.
And I kind of hate the word grind,
Yes. Me too.
um, because, like, I think it's a useful skill that's necessary
Mhm.
to get through the tough parts, or like when we're experiencing a lot of external things.
Mhm.
I just think it's not a way of life to strive for,
Yeah, I agree.
because I think that it is extremely dangerous to commit ourselves to grind, because, like, what if nobody's there to tell us to stop,
Mhm.
and we grind away the months or years of our lives when we need to be, like, taking care of other things like our health or our kids, or, you know whatever, like our
Starting
friendships.
friendships, starting romantic relationships
Yeah,
could
yeah,
potentially even help you with the grind of some
yeah.
kind. Yeah.
I look around, I'm 54, and there's, I know lots of people my age. I know lots of people older than me. One of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about is the way some people are like, well, I don't really have much of a support system. And I'm like, well, what have you been doing that you haven't developed a support system? Like, I get it, like, not everybody's an extrovert, but introverts still cultivate friendships and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
They just do it a little different.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what have you been grinding away at that
Mm-hmm.
you ignored building your support network? Because you're going to need it.
Yeah.
Nobody you know, gets out off for free and doesn't need a support structure. So, like, I think that your wheel idea really helps you keep that in mind. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I
work
agree.
on your family, work on your friends, work on
Yeah.
your spirituality, whatever it takes to have a support structure for you.
I'm going to quote you.
Oh, I love that.
Something awesome you said to me one time.
I forget shit I say all the time, so it's always nice to be reminded.
I'm going to quote you because
Okay.
one thing that you said to me that stuck with me that I share with my clients all the time, and I always say this really smart person I know, really awesome person I know, once said, it's better to sprint and rest than to grind.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And that stuck with me a lot. And I always check in with myself. And that's one thing I'll add here is just like, this kind of goes hand in hand with the idea of like, what season are you focusing on in your life? Like, is it the business? Is it the career? I mean, for me, it's definitely business, right? And so I'm not flying high in the business that I want to be or where I feel good about it. Feel good about it, but I could feel better about it. Right? And so that's
yeah,
the focus for me. And also like being aware of like going on dates, hanging out with friends, going on vacation versus just trying to only commit to the business. Because it makes me think of that idea of like, you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go with other people.
yeah.
Yeah, because you burn out. And so I definitely felt that in a lot of ways. So yeah, any other thoughts to add before we wrap up?
Well, I would just hope that anybody that is listening to this would just like take a second and be like, you know, no beat up about it, but like honestly, what have you been ignoring? Because, like, I'm not saying that has to be your next thing, but like
Yeah.
don't let it fall off the radar entirely.
Yeah. Well said. I agree. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you like what you hear, give us a follow. Tune in next time. Bye
We'll
bye.
see you soon. Bye.